Hello everyone, and welcome to the next episode in the GameStorm EDU series. This episode will be about designing good game mechanics. And remember, you can always head to www.gamestormedu.com for more information on this topic and others. Also, when you go to gamestormedu.com, you can head to the Resources for Creating Games tab, and you can make a copy of the GameStorm EDU Designer Workbook. You can then work along with this video on how to design good mechanics and do other game design related tasks. All right, so for mechanics, these are the actions, rules, obstacles, choices, and really any other parts of your game that really change how the players play and advance towards their goal. In our previous video, we looked at how you design a good objective or goal for your players, and the mechanics are how you lead them to that, things that stand in their way, and other aspects. This is really the meat and potatoes of your game. So for developing key mechanics, they might look something like this. Combining number cards to add up to an enemy total would be a mechanic. Gathering enough resources cards to meet an objective would be a mechanic. Trick others into guessing your fake news might be a mechanic. Or matching elements to make compounds in science might be an example of mechanics in a game. Here's an example from our GameStormers game of mechanics. These are often considered the verbs of your game, or how you work towards the game and win. And so for an example, in GameStormers, we have a card called Use Secret Passage. That could be an action you take in the game or a mechanic you use to get closer to your goal. So let's take a look at 5 keys for designing good mechanics. One example is good choices equals good mechanics. And this is one of my favorite quotes. Sid Meier, who designed the Civilizations series of games, said a good game is a series of interesting choices. So if you provide good choices for your players, that will lead to good mechanics. Really tough choices are important. So for example, in GameStormers, one tough choice you have is what items and mechanics and storyline cards am I going to use to create my game? So that's a really interesting choice that the players have. That is one of the key mechanics to that game. A second important key is keeping in mind that fun comes first and flavor or the theme or the story of your game comes second. That's what people keep coming back to. Players return to games that have fun mechanics, mechanics that make them think, are entertaining, are interesting. The storyline is good, and don't get me wrong, I love a good storyline, but think about how your game works first. An example of this in action would be that this haunted ship card, the theme behind it, of it being this haunted ship, doesn't fit what the card does, which allows you to replace one card from your GameStormers notebook from a card with your hand, but it has a cool mechanic that's really handy for the players and it helps them out. So maybe it doesn't fit exactly with what a haunted ship might do in real life, but it is a fun card that helps you work towards your goal. A third key to keep in mind is that you always want to be thinking about the player's perspective when you're making a game. So you want to ask yourself, are any of my mechanics, the things they do or stand in their way, are they cruel, unfair? Are they complicated and make it hard to understand the game? Always think and ask your players about this aspect of your mechanic. So here's an example of a revision that happened with the GameStormers game. We realized that having this big, complicated game board was actually really intimidating for players and made the game drag on. So empathizing with the players and realizing that was tough caused us to change it so that there was a very minimal game board experience that was much easier to understand. So simplifying the game board, making it more clear, made it for a better mechanic overall. A fourth key is always favor strategy over chance. If you have a game that's heavily based on chance, the players don't feel like they're influencing it. They feel like they're rolling a dice or spinning a spinner, and Lady Luck is the only thing that determines who wins and loses. So think about how chance works into your game, and maybe chance is a calculated risk. So in this example, players should feel like their choices matter, and that is what improves their odds, not just a lucky roll of a dice or some other randomness. So for example, in GameStormers, one aspect of luck is that if you want to make your own card at the theater, you roll these dice with images on them. And so it actually functions not as, a lucky roll or unlucky roll. It's more creative constraint. When you roll, you get only a finite amount of images that you could pick from, rather than saying, well, I rolled a 6, so I'm closer to the goal than the person that rolled a 1, right? So this one is still a little bit of luck, but it's luck with a specific goal. It's kind of risk-reward luck. And then finally, the last key that we have is make sure your mechanics always follow your goal for the players. So don't have any extraneous mechanics, right? No mechanics for mechanics' sake, right? You're doing it just because you think it'd be fun, but it actually has nothing to do with the end goal of the game. So always make sure that those mechanics help players work towards their goal, right? So an example of this is we had some fun mechanics in the first iteration of Game Stormers, right? There was a scarecrow card that would allow you to prevent people from going to places. But we realized that just because it fit for what a scarecrow might do, scare people away, it was bad for the game. It didn't help players advance towards their goal, and it actually hurt their chances of making a great game in Game Stormers, which was the goal. So we had to take that card out. The same is true for our dragon card. It allowed you to move other teams' meeples, or our mysterious figure, which allowed you to steal a card from another player. These were good, these were mechanics that could technically work, but they were bad for the gamers because they ruined games. And we wanted you to make the best game you could without hurting other people's games in the process. So we removed those mechanics because we realized they didn't have a purpose. So very key that you have mechanics that are purposeful and help people advance towards the goal. Some other ways to brainstorm mechanics that we have out there as well. What about if you were studying a topic and that character historical figure was in a story? What powers might they have? And that could become their mechanic. Or in your subject, what might be the currency in a particular game about a certain topic? All right, so now with those ideas in mind, it is your turn to brainstorm a mechanic for your game. Good luck.